Welcome to the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepard, where we explore faith and mental health perspectives on current affairs. Let's get into today's discussion with the Spirit in Mind.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and what a blessing it is to be able to share with you today. And we give good evening greetings to Dr. Jonathan Shepard. Good evening, Dr. Shepard.
Hey, Bishop. How are you doing?
Doing well. All is well. Busy, but it's good. How about you?
It's good. We are in the midst of a new month. Not to date ourselves as we go through the broadcast, but I must acknowledge that it is a new month, and it is the month where we emphasize mental health and mental wellness. And so, which is one of our core aspects of what we do on this show. So I want to welcome everyone to the month of May, where we are going to focus in on mental health awareness. And so what an awesome time, privilege to be on this platform.
Yes, absolutely. And we want to encourage our Spirit in Mind family to hang with us through this month of May as we really emphasize what really we're committed to, as Dr. Shepard said. So we certainly want to lift it and keep it before our conversations and conscious intentions for this month. And we welcome our Spirit in Mind family. Please let someone know we're on. I'm doing the same because we really do grow from the interaction and the engagement. And so we're so grateful for our Spirit in Mind family. You help us to do what we feel impassioned to do so much better by way of the communication and involvement. So Dr. Shepard usually helps us with getting a little bit of contact information out there. And so we want to yield to him at this time. Dr. Shepard, how can they stay connected?
So stay connected. Absolutely. Let's do it. We want to hear from you. You can stay connected to our social media platforms. I am available through various means such as email, and my Gmail account is listed there, office, Facebook, YouTube, Facebook page. Dr. Jonathan Shepard had a wonderful number of views this past week, so please keep it up. YouTube channel, go there, subscribe to it. That way, when we go live, you will be notified. So as you're listening to us right now, go ahead and hit that button that says turn on notifications. That way you will never miss what we're talking about. You can go to my Twitter and Instagram pages, follow me, like me there. And so you can get any, again, notification of what is going on, even some pictures that we'll be doing. And follow me on my website. And if you need any direct care services, you can go to my website or my email address. They're connected, and you can let me know what you're in need of. Bishop C. Guy Robinson. I want to make sure we get his information out. Email also, his Gmail account is listed there, office number, and go to his Facebook, Instagram pages, and you can follow him and see what awesome things he has going on. I know that he has been traveling through various countries. Well, I said states. Some of our states are as big as countries, but various states. And he's been going about preaching and teaching the word of the Lord. And so go there, follow him. He may be in a city near you. Instagram, Twitter, please go there and share. I want you to do this again. Go to look at where you're looking at us right now and see that turn on notification button, and go ahead and press turn on notifications. You can even go to our Spirit in Mind. We do have a Spirit in Mind Facebook page, and go there, and that way you'll never miss any information or content that we're sharing with everyone as we go through each week, our weekly broadcasts, and saying hello to all those who are commenting. So continue to comment. I'll be joining as I hand it back over to Bishop, and we'll get this dialogue started.
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. I echo Dr. Shepard's greetings to everyone. Just looking through the chat line, and of course, chat line doesn't give us titles, but Sandra McCrae, Laverne Jones, Cynthia Hackshaw, Stacy Bynum, Catherine Jones, Linda Farrar, Jacqueline Shaw. We are so grateful that you're sharing with us and really are part of our Spirit and Mind dialogue and content, because again, you help to drive the discussions that we're either engaging in or will be engaging in future episodes of Spirit and Mind, because you influenced us very much. And so we're grateful for this relationship, this mutually influential relationship. So this year has been quite interesting, of course, and it started off with us talking a little bit about planning, and then when plans get frustrated and why they get frustrated, and then that ended up first we started talking about planning and expectations and experience, and when the experience doesn't meet the expectations, then we started shifted from expectation to relationships and cooperation. What happens when our plan requires others who perhaps don't have the vision as passionately as we do, or don't see things the way we do. And that led us into a conversation about forgiveness. And so how to have healthy relationships, and forgiveness sent us for a while. And Dr. Shepard usually does this part so he can kick in and fill in anywhere here. I'm just kind of giving a survey of how we got here. And that got us to talking about relationships and forgiveness, and the glory cloud, if you will, just kind of hovered right there. And we just needed to stay there because there were so many layers to that to effectively peel the proverbial onion and get to the core. And so that took us to talking about trauma triggers and those various kind of things, and traumatic events, the traumatic experiences, the traumatic effects. That sent us to talking about so many other things. And we that added to a lot of balance and homeostasis. And we looked at Dr. Shepard helped us to understand how lungs function and use that natural biological principle to give us spiritual insight as well. And so here we are, continuing that as we're talking about post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress, and how can we grow from these moments. And so, Dr. Shepard, where do we go from here, in the words of the old gospel song?
Right. Yes, sir. And so thank you, Bishop. That was awesome, the recap. And so what we're going to do, we're going to grow from here, whether or not you've been traumatized or not. And I believe all of us have some form of trauma that we can relate to. And I always want to make sure we're clear that as we go through these episodes, if you are experiencing anything as we talk about it, make sure that you check in with your mental health professional. We do not serve as a surrogate or representation of your own direct mental health care services. And so please make sure, because that happens as you talk about trauma. Sometimes you, as Bishop just said, you peel back the onion and you didn't realize that the sore or the injury was still there because you just masked it, you covered it up. You were taking the aspirin or the various opioids to numb the pain. And if you just numb the pain, that doesn't mean that the injury is better. It just means that you dull the pain nerves. And when you dull the pain nerves, it doesn't heal the injury. And so we want to make sure that as we go through this, if you're in need of direct care services, let us know. And but this does not serve as that particular point of reference. Just wanted to emphasize that.
That's good, Dr. Shepard. While you're doing that, we
Yes,
can
sir.
also use the spiritual parallel for that, because as their pastoral care
Yes, sir.
disclaimers, to say that certainly some things may come up that have spiritual significance and may even be indicative of spiritual woundings and or spiritual warfare. And so certainly that may provoke a conversation with your pastoral covering. And so the same thing applies. So the objective is of course, to have awareness, and then that gives us the ability to articulate certain things. And so as you start peeling the onion, as we know, we make a distinction between the presenting issue and what may be more deep-seated issues. That applies to both disciplines. And the presenting issue is the thing that made it hurt enough to come see. My arm hurts, or whatever, or this is happening. And usually, oftentimes, that's the fruit. And then you find out that where there's a fruit, there's a deeper root. And so we're distinguishing fruit from root. And so as we discuss things that are fruity, if you will, it may get to some things that get to some roots, and you may need to continue to work on that, either with pastoral covering or therapeutic services care. And so good disclaimer. Every now and then we do that. Dr. Shepard, take it back.
Absolutely. So as we now move forward, last week we were talking about assessment of capacity for growth. That's where we were. And as I gave the illustration regarding lungs, I was showing through that illustration how a lung can be obstructed and yet look like it is, and not even look like it has a lot of air in it. But just because you have a lot of air doesn't mean that the lung is working appropriately. And so if our engineer, Mr. Cat, if you still have that slide shown, let's go back to it very, very quickly. So obstructive lung disease, if you remember this from last week, the lung on the right is a representation of a lung that has obstructive lung disease. You might say, well, Dr. Shepard, that lung looks like it could function because look at all that air in it. Look at all that volume. That's the problem. It has all the volume in it, but lungs are not supposed to just inhale and take everything in. It's supposed to exhale and be able to allow that air out. So when you have an obstruction in the way, such as with asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, those are two of the biggest ones that fall in that category. You go to look at a person who has lungs, who suffers with that disease, this is how they will look. And you might say, wow, the lungs are big. They should be able to breathe. Unfortunately, the lung volume has increased, but the narrowing of the airways does not allow that air to escape. And literally, they are dying because they can't exhale the air out. They cannot get the air out of the lung. And so that is a really powerful illustration of how so many times we can take things in, but we don't put it back out. I'll never forget how a previous youth leader, this is back in the day before I became the youth pastor at my former church, she said, Shepard, he said, you're spiritually constipated. I said, what in the world? She said, yeah, you keep taking all the information in. You got all this in you, and you're not putting it to use. She said, there's too much in you to not be putting it back out so that you can be useful. And, sometimes we're fearful of all the things that may come to us to want to do. And I tell you, I have never forgotten that word, as you see, and that's been some many years, probably 15 years, maybe even longer than that, at least between 15 and 20 years ago. And I still have not forgotten that word. And so I want to tell you too, that as we're assessing our capacity to grow today, think about what is obstructing you from being able to exhale and be able to allow the movement of purpose in your life so that you can fulfill God's destiny for you. And that growth process is where we're at. Remember, some of us get stuck because we've taken all the injury in, and we've even taken in all the therapy and even all the word of the Lord, and yet we haven't put it back out so that we can grow. and move forward in what God would want us to do. So this is obstructive lung disease. I also talked about restrictive lung disease. I'll show that very quickly. And that lung right there, again, is on the right. And this is a lung that has been injured by external forces. And don't want to spend, again, a lot of time here. Please go back and listen to last week's show where I went into it in detail. But I'll just highlight here that this is the lung that suffered from trauma, from burnout, from grief, loss. It's been injured. And when you have been injured, such as this particular lung with restrictive lung disease, you have scarring there, fibrosis. And so when that happens, the lung can no longer expand. And when that happens, then it doesn't matter how much air you inhale, it's just not going to take it because its capacity has been decreased, has been reduced. And so that is a very important point, that some of us find ourselves as the obstructive lung, some of us find ourselves as a restrictive lung. Regardless, we want to assess for capacity today, assess our capacity to grow. I will share with you acronym, but as I've just recapped real quickly, so let's see if Bishop has anything to add to that, and then we will move forward on the assessment for capacity to grow.
Dr. Shepard, this is good. It really just is the Bible talks about first natural, then spiritual. And so we can really learn a lot of spiritual revelation and insight from the way our bodies are constructed. Of course, the word says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And so I really appreciate that example that you've given from our physical bodies, because even the scriptures, the Apostle Paul refers to us as the body of Christ, and one part can't say it doesn't have need of another, because the point is the way we're constructed biologically, being fearfully and wonderfully made, can really give us insight to spiritual truths and principles and practices. And so what is so powerful about that is that you're talking about the capacity versus the actual performance. And that's so powerful for several reasons. What do we have the capacity to do? It reminds me of like the difference between lifespan and life expectancy. The human life span is how long we have the capacity to live as human beings. The human life expectancy is the statistical probability of how long we're likely to live, based off of certain biopsychosocial realities, and some of them that block our development or hinder our growth. And that's what's so powerful to me, because we often speak of the World Health Organization's definition of mental health, and the first characteristic of which is the ability to realize our abilities. And if we can't really realize our abilities, it creates a sense of frustration. I shared with our church family this morning, and sharing with them, I was reminded of Ecclesiastes 13, and I talked about that, I think, in the previous episode, where it's interesting that Ecclesiastes writer says, God has set eternity in the heart of our being, our bodies. So in the midst of, though we're finite beings, think about that, God has put something in us that makes us conscious of something greater, of a greater capacity of being. God has set eternity, the concept, because eternity is the absence of time. It is beyond time. So he has set in beings of time something that is aware of something that is beyond time. And that's why you often hear this great existential voice internally that says, there's got to be more. There's got to be more, which is really the cry of my capacity. Saying there's more, there's more, there's more. And that's where the spirituality kicks in, because really even our mortal bodies can't handle our capacity. The scripture says, though my earthly body is passing away, my inner man is growing stronger day by day, because God set something inside of each one of us that lets us know that we have the capacity to be more than we're actually experiencing. And so we're talking about how can we maximize that capacity. And that analogy is powerful, to remove the blockages, to lay aside every weight that does so easily beset us, so that we can run and realize all of that potential. And so that's a lifelong pursuit. We count not ourselves to have apprehended, but that's kind of what we're talking about physiologically, psychologically, and spiritually today. So that's just what came to mind to me.
Yes, sir. So, with that said, we're going to now talk about how to assess for capacity to grow. And those who know me know I like acronyms, and so that's where things stick in my head. And so the acronym here today is CRAM, CRAM. And what we'll do is we'll just look at these four different things of how to be able to assess for capacity to grow. And I'll just deal with the first one. Number one is communicate a choice. Number one, communicate a choice. And if you're following along, I want you to go ahead and write it in the comment section. That lets us know that you're hearing and listening. So number one, what do we need to do to assess for capacity to grow? Communicate a choice. All right. So what does that mean? Make a decision. Do I remain a product of the trauma, or do I take the experience and grow from it? So that's the main question there. Do I take what has happened to me and remain stuck, or do I take that experience and grow from it? All right. So again, I want to see some comments. Number one, communicate a choice. Communicate. What does that mean? It means that you need to tell yourself, tell your circle of influence, tell your spiritual leader, walk it out through your verbal and your nonverbal language. So when you are communicating a choice, it's not just for you to keep it to yourself. You need to tell your circle of influence. Now, we've talked many times about who should be in that circle, but so we're not going to do that today. But you need to let people know, I'm making a decision that no longer will I remain traumatized or remain a victim of the trauma that has occurred in my life. And speak to your spiritual leader about it. And as you communicate, it's not just verbally, it's your nonverbal language that also, in my opinion, I shouldn't say also, is more important than even your verbal language. Well, why is that? Well, yes, the Bible does talk about we must speak and make things audible. Absolutely, I agree. But do you realize that 70% of how you communicate is nonverbal? 70% of how you communicate things is non-verbally. So how is it that we are going to just keep saying something and yet our non-verbal language doesn't match up with it? So if you're saying I'm communicating a choice, I make a decision that I will grow, that I will take the post-traumatic stress or the post-traumatic experience and move it to post-traumatic growth, then you want to be able to not only hear it from you, you want to be able to walk it out. So that means that you're looking for ways to demonstrate. It's one thing for me to say I'm happy, and yet I look like I'm sad, down, crying. There's a disconnect there. I don't know if you ever had someone tell you something and you look at them, he's like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up to what they just told me. Yeah, it's the same thing. When you make that decision about moving from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth, let's communicate that choice. Bishop.
Yeah, that's powerful, Dr. Shepard, because that is and it's not denial, because that's what you say. It's accepting that what happened, the whatever was the traumatic experience, my emotional effect, what it happened, and I'm not denying that, but I'm making a conscious choice that I want to grow from it and not be arrested by it. making a conscious choice that I want to move on from this in a way that essentially gives me a testimony where I can own what happened and acknowledge what happened. And I can also speak of it in terms of the turnaround. Um, and so that's very important. And what you're saying about the other ways to communicate and having really a consistent effect, and so that we're not communicating defeat with our body language while we're talking the talk and just going through the verbiage of victory. But there's a posture of victory, and there's a look. And even the Bible speaks of lift up your heads. And thou, O Lord, art a shield about me. You're my glory. You're the lifter of my head. And so those kind of things is that to paraphrase my friend Bishop William Murphy, says you prophesy with your body. So you can, so your posture becomes a prophetic declaration. And you've seen, as Dr. Shepherd said again, sometimes you see people in church say, I got the victory. But and so that I just want to touch on too, that may challenge some things too, because that may challenge the part of me that wants the attention of being a victim.
Wow.
Because there may be some kind of concerning warped payoff that I'm getting out of always being even when I'm talking victory, just well, pray for me, child, because all of that. My language and everything, I'm speaking like I have victory, but the tenor of my voice and the shrugged shoulders and the posture is looking sympathetic, because maybe that's the reward that I want on some. So I'm prepared to grow, even if it doesn't get me a bunch of likes on social media. Because there may be more people who were drawn to my victimization role than are drawn to my healing and healthiness. And so all of that is in there. I made a decision. And once you make a decision to do that, you also are deciding not to do some things. And deciding what I'm going to do is also deciding what I'm not going to do. And once your agenda becomes clear, it may not attract some of the same people who would have been attracted if you had another agenda. So growth has to be the decision, even if it's not as popular as as some other decisions I could have made. So that's just coming to mind for me. So I choose to grow. That's what I'm getting from that. I choose to grow from this. That's powerful. Let's move to the next one of the crayon metaphor, because it's a lot in here.
Yes, sir. So next one is relevance. And so what that stands for is understanding the relevant information. So number one, communicator choice. Number two is relevance or relevancy. Understand the relevant information. So Dr. Shepherd, what are you saying there? I'm saying take the time to parcel out the facts of the event versus the distorted opinions of why it happened. I'll repeat that again. We must take time to parcel out. What does that mean? That means pull it apart. Facts versus distorted opinions of why it happened. Well, Dr. Shepherd, that means that I can't get all wound up again. Some people, Bishop, they love being re-injured again. Oh, I hate saying that. Just being even in the profession, where both of us are at, and it just I hate to hear where people just, well, let me tell you the story again. It's almost like there's an excitement that comes with it as they get re-traumatized and injured again. And I know it kind of sounds sick, but honestly, I see it more commonly than what you would believe. So what I'm saying to you is that as we are in this growth phase, post-traumatic growth, we must be honest with ourselves, truthful with ourselves. What were the facts and what are the distorted opinions of why the trauma happened? So our emotions, hear me on this, will distort the narrative of the trauma. I was really taken back by this as I was reading the book, Thanks for the Feedback. And you've heard me mention that in other broadcasts, that that book really talks about how when you receive information, we receive words, that some of us are so traumatized by the words that are given to us by a peer or a person who we respect. And literally, we are saddened, disappointed, and the person could have just been speaking the truth to us, um, and in an appropriate manner and respectful manner. But because our our mental health, our PCWC is not in line, is not well, we haven't been functioning well, we take it as such a hit, and we'll develop this narrative. Our emotions will distort the narrative of the trauma. All right. I need somebody to even write that in the comment section. I'm gonna have you all engaged here today. You already wrote communicate a choice. I need you number 2, right? Understand the relevant information. And under that, you need to type your emotions will distort the narrative, the story of the trauma. Our stories have an emotional soundtrack. Now that's a quote I got from that book. Man, that thing, it's hit me. Because what I started to do, literally, Bishop, I started to look up various different songs. You know, for those who have that "woe is me" and those breakup songs, and you go listen to the various different artists, the R&B artists out there, and your story got a soundtrack to it. Oh, you just don't understand, Dr. Shepherd. He left me. She left me. She ghosted me. That's the term now. He ghosted me. I tell you. And you got songs to match up with how you're feeling. And let me tell you, I'm not downplaying anything of how you feel. Hear me on that. What I want to make sure is what we do is that, as I said at the beginning of this particular point, parcel out the facts versus the distorted opinions of why it happened. If you remain stuck in something for so long, Bishop, many times the true narrative you forget. I've talked to people several times holding a grudge against people. I don't want to digress too much, but we talked about this in forgiveness, but I think it matches here. People are 10, 11, 12, 20 years holding on to something that happened. And then they try to remember why they were mad at the person. Some people are trying to literally relive it. And somewhere they get the facts wrong. And oh my Lord, it's like, wait a minute, why am I still mad at you? Even the trauma. Yes, it happened. Yes, it occurred. But when you hold on to something for so long, those facts will get distorted by that emotional soundtrack. Every time you see the person, boom, 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 it's like a chorus comes in. Now, I know Bishop is loving it because that music is his thing. I love music too, but I mean that's Bishop's passion, one of his passions. So I know he can really drum that up. But I can almost imagine every time you see something, this big chorus just comes right on in. And don't you just love how music just gets you all wound up? You sitting in the movie theater, and if you're watching a horror movie and they got the music playing and you don't even realize that it's playing in the background, and before you know it, you're jumping out your seat. That means the people who made that movie, they did their job because they were creeping to get you to that point to where you just pop off, so to speak, jump in your seat in your theater because it had a soundtrack that was getting your emotions all wound up. Remember what relevant stands for? I'm going to stop here. It means significant, demonstrable evidence of the matter at hand. That's what the word relevant means. It's significant and it's demonstrable evidence of the matter at hand. Some of the stuff that we're holding on to that we've been traumatized is not significant and is not demonstrable evidence of the facts and the matter at hand of what we've been going through. I'm gonna stop right there.
The spiritual, and let me say this theological parallel, because it really all is spiritual. Because it can be argued that everything is spiritual. And so, because the spiritual world is greater than any other world. In fact, the seen world is the product of things that are invisible or spiritual, is what the word says. And so, with that in mind, it's powerful spiritually because and psychologically, it's psychospiritual because what it really is that my feelings are important. But there comes a time when I have to understand that all of my feelings may not be factual. My feelings are strong. And sometimes when my feelings are really strong, certain even physiological things that Dr. Shepard could talk to in more detail start happening. My sympathetic nervous system kicks in and I can feel the adrenaline. And that's very real because my feelings are involved. And so now certain parts of me are actually going through physiological changes. Sometimes we even say that I could feel the blood boiling in my veins. We say stuff like that to describe our emotional state. But what you can really feel is that fight, flight, fawn, freeze, all of that kind of stuff happening. And it's essentially my body saying, here's some stuff so you can do something. So that may very well be real. So my feelings are real. And the physiological effects that it is provoking may be real, but feelings are not always factual. And that's the catch. My feelings vacillate. And so what I'm feeling right now may not be responsive to a fact. So I've got to be able to distinguish what are feelings from what are factual. What are the facts? And that takes some time. That's really introspective work. And so this isn't get quick fixes that we're suggesting here. We're talking about going through some processes that cause us to look within. And sometimes looking within is harder than looking without. And sometimes pointing fingers and all of that. So feelings are not always factual. So I have to go through those and do those assessments. And so sometimes, and that's where the spiritual part comes into, and that's where even introspective prayer, not just us talking, but introspective prayer goes through a time of us talking and then a time of us listening and a time of us looking within and allowing the Lord to speak within and not stifling that voice, because what he says in response within may not be something we want to hear. And so we may pray amiss. So we have to ask ourselves, and there's this verse in Hebrews. Let me see if I can put it in the chat line and you can read it in detail. But he says, Paul says, or the writer of Hebrews says that the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. And here's what he says: distinguishing even between soul and spirit, psyche and pneuma. Psyche, from which we even get the word psychology. He says, sometimes you need a word that will help me distinguish what is spiritual from what is emotional.
Wow.
Because it's hard to tell. He says, actually, it's comparable to joints and marrow. There's the body comparison. If you understand joints and marrow, you understand that it's hard to touch one without touching the other.
That's right.
And so he says, soul and spirit, psyche and pneuma are so intertwined that I need a word that'll help me distinguish what is emotional from what is spiritual. Because it can very well be that what I'm feeling emotionally may feel spiritual, but it's not spiritual. And so it's really my emotions, and it may even have more to do with unhealed and unaddressed trauma from my past that's being triggered and is causing me to act in this moment. So Lord, I need you to help me to know the difference, because I'm saying that it's you, but it's not you, it's my emotions. But they're so intertwined that I think it's you, but it's really the vestiges of unresolved issues that are being triggered. And so, God, I need you to look within, search me, oh God, because I feel like quitting.
Yep.
And my whole sympathetic nervous system, and I'm going through the physiological changes. Now, the physiological changes don't necessarily know the difference. And Dr. Shepard could talk to that. The same adrenaline that it gives you to beat a bear in the woods is the same adrenaline it'll give you in this moment. And so you have to have the reason to say, this is not a bear, because we fighting bears that aren't there. And so I have to go through all of that and help us distinguish, so that I can discern what is relevant from what is pushing my buttons and is really the result. Because by the time I weave my unaddressed past trauma issues in with what's happening now, and I finish my projections and transferences and all of that, it's so interwoven that I've created my own narrative that is really no longer exclusively what's happening now. It's what's happening now with what I never resolved from 15, what I never resolved from when I was 8, and it's all twisted in there now. And now my emotions are in there. And because I'm a believer, I've put it on God as if it is a spiritual decision that I'm making, when really it's emotional. So God, search me so that my decision, and help me to figure out and reveal to me what is relevant. Relevance is from the word revelation, which means apocalypto in the Greek, which means a pulling back of the covers, so that that which is already true but was previously unknown can be seen. That's what revelation means. It means, so God, pull back the covers on my spirit. The covers of denial, the covers of avoidance, the covers of low esteem, the covers of brokenness, the cover of abuse, the covers of what happened to me, and help me to find out what is relevant for me to grow and move forward in this moment.
Wow. All right. That's a as they do in the song, that's where you just pause.
And it's okay to be honest with that. Look at the psalmist when he's talking. He's saying, my tears are my meat night and day. Why are you cast down, oh my soul? Why are you feeling like this? I'm doing nothing but crying. I'm not eating. And thank you, Stacy Bonham says, my creative people like me, your mind can fill in the gaps. And we can create narratives. I'm a sermon writer. I'm a wordsmith. I'm a songwriter. And so we can fill in stuff. So when we think about that, when we're talking and interacting with people, and when people are responding and doing and going through stuff, what I don't hear, I can fill in the gap with what I think I hear. And I done wrote a whole new song.
Wow.
And so as we're talking about the soundtracks of our lives, so you can compose stuff, make up stuff, and even put words in people's mouths that they didn't say and misinterpret based on past stuff and say, I never said that, but that's what I heard. Yes, you did. And it's very real to me because I wrote that narrative.
Wow.
And so I'm saying that to say, God can help us with that. There's help and hope. Therapy can help us with that. But it's so important that we own that and say that in our prayers. Lord, help me to distinguish what is the emotional moment from what is spiritual. Help me to distinguish. I need a word that will divide joints from marrow and psyche from pneuma and soul from spirit. and emotions from a rhema word in season, because I can't tell the difference right now because it's all jumbled up.
Wow, Bishop. So powerful. And as you see, this is what it takes to grow. Remember, this is where we're on that path of growth. And we've already said it. It's hard. It's difficult. It is not easy, but it's necessary. But also, it is doable. Sometimes I think we forget that when we say it's hard, it's this, it's necessary, you're like, man, but can I do it? Yes, you can do it. That is so important. It is doable. It is doable. It is doable. I need somebody to even write that in the comment section. This thing is doable. It's doable to communicate a choice. It's doable to be able to understand the relevant information. Some of us need to break these soundtracks today. Smash them.
Yeah, and it's okay to say I need help with doing that. It is doable. Sometimes we can do it on our own, but sometimes we need a coach. Sometimes we need somebody to help us to discern what's relevant. You know, I mean, sometimes you just need to say that. Sometimes you're moving or you're cleaning out your closet. You got a good friend. You say to them, "Come over here, help me clean out some of this stuff." And so that's okay. So sometimes it's like, sometimes it may need a little therapeutic work. It may need some pastoral care and counsel. So, but the point is, it's doable. It can be done.
It is doable. It's doable. And I'm purposely staying there because I don't want to rush through this. This is nothing to rush through. I want to actually just share with you how this acronym came up, because I don't think I'm going to get into the other two. I'll save those for our next broadcast because I don't want to rush through them. This actually came through a scientific paper, believe it or not. This is not something that I just created on my own. This is not something that I just read in the Bible or anything like that. And I'm emphasizing the fact that it came through a scientific journal because we must remember that God is not against science, that he is with science. You know, so many times as I read through various journals and scientific articles, I just hear the voice of the Lord speaking to me. I see his handiwork. I just see the awesomeness of God. And Bishop, when I saw this 4 steps for assessment, I began to think about, wow, this can be applied to so many different areas of our lives. The situation in which was happening in this journal was a young lady who was in the midst of deciding to have an abortion or not. This is where this actually comes out of. The article was talking about how the physician is going to be able to make a informed decision with the woman, a young woman at that, about whether or not to end the life of a child prematurely. And so these 4 steps are what the physician goes through when they're having those type of decisions. Because believe it or not, when that person makes a decision, that can be and typically is a traumatic point in life. And again, I'm not here to get into why she had to make the decision or how she came to make the decision. That's not the point right here. The point is that when you are in a crossroads of life, or when you have already experienced something that is traumatic, that has shook you to your core, almost took you out of here. That's what trauma is. It's a life-threatening event. I want to make sure that it's not just something that just, oh, I got a headache, or, someone just threw something at me. No, this trauma is life-threatening. Let's make that clear. It's something that threatens your ability to survive, to be able to move forward. It threatens your very being. All right. And that's even something that we need to, Bishop, really, because some of the stuff people are calling trauma is not trauma. All right. I'll leave that alone. But we want to make sure that when we are assessing, just like this physician was working with this young woman, he allowed her to make a choice because she was struggling. She was battling in her mind as to what to do. Then she had to understand what the relevant information is, because I can hear someone, and there may even be someone out there who is wrestling with it. I don't take that for granted, Bishop. Who knows I'm looking at some of these people who are listening to our show, even currently. I'm like, wow, people throughout the nation are listening, even currently now. So I don't know what people are faced with. We're sensitive to that. You may be faced personally, or you may have a child or a coworker who literally is faced with making that decision of a life remaining in the womb of a woman right now. And that's such a hot button topic, Bishop. You know that, my Lord. You look at the different laws that are coming out in Oklahoma and Texas about banning abortions of a person who has been pregnant after 6 weeks. So this is a hot topic. We're very relevant right now. And so when we look at how do we make these decisions, communicating this choice, understanding the relevant information, I want to give you that backdrop of how this came to be about, so you can understand that this is not just something we just pull out the word or a book. Or no, this is what goes through a physician's mind. So hopefully you have a greater appreciation for your doctor, for he or she, as they work with you when you have to make these life-changing decisions.
Yeah, that's very important because it applies to numerous contexts in which we have to make a decision. Dr. Shepard gave one example that could really apply. I would suggest that when I was talking, I was reminded of the word crisis. I want to suggest, I'll put it in the chat. Let's see if I can put it in the chat, because it's a critical point. The word crisis actually comes from the word krisis in the Greek, and what it means is to be at a decision-making point.
Mm.
It's a fork in the road. It means things could go either way. Like when someone said they'd be in critical condition, so things could go one way or the other. Uh, the two Chinese words in Chinese is two symbols that make it up. The word the symbol for danger and the symbol for opportunity create the word crisis, because it is a time of opposition and opportunity. And when you're at a fork in the road, you understand you could go to the left or you could go to the right. But what you can't do is continue the same way you've been going. So you can't stay on the path you've been on. Life is unfolded in a way that is making it like you can go this way or that way. And so as we're talking about post-traumatic growth, I want to suggest that after we've survived the traumatic event, we're now at a critical point.
Wow.
So I came out of the trauma and now I'm at a point of crisis in this definition, because now I have to choose whether I'm going to go the way that is healthy or whether I go the way that is not so healthy, whether I'm going to grow, the path of growth, or the path of arrested development. And so now I'm at this crisis point. I survived the traumatic event. Now I'm at a critical experience, because what I decide to do now and how I decide to use my life having survived the trauma. And so that's why this CRAM process is so very important for whatever post-trauma decisions you need to make. I survived the abuse. I survived the loss. I survived the pain. I survived the rejection. Whatever that point is, I've survived the event. And you heard me say in previous episodes that the event is one thing and the experience is another. The very definition of post-trauma is when the event is over, but the experience is still reverberating and ruminating and resonating. And so now I'm at a critical point, and that's why we started off with this point that Dr. Shepard made. I'm still there at communication. I'm making a decision to grow. I'm saying it to myself, and I may even need to say it to people who want to keep me repeating the narrative of defeat and all of that kind of thing. I have to say sometimes, I have to leave it. How you doing? I'm choosing to grow. See, it happened. Oh, you did not? No, no, no. It happened. I survived it. I survived it for a reason. Um, and so I'm choosing to grow. So that critical point is now where I'm saying, so Lord, help me. I'm choosing to grow at this before I take this step. This cram process, if you can see yourself standing at the crossroads or at the fork in the road, rather, you can see yourself standing at the fork of the road saying, I can't keep going forward because that's been taken away. I'm going to either choose to grow or choose to be arrested in my development. I'm going to either. So now, Lord, I choose to grow. So help me. If I'm going to take this path, show me the relevant signs. You know, if you traveled on any highway, there's certain signs you can't afford to miss. Some are more relevant than others. Others are distractions.
Yep.
If you look at too many signs, you'll have an accident.
Yep.
Some of them are distractions, but others of them are directions.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lord, help me now to disseminate and distinguish and discern what is relevant from what is a distraction. So, help me to know directions from distractions. And
Yes.
so these are part of the decision-making processes. And I'll close with this to say, you know, we're talking about it, but I just said this this weekend. I want for some people, it's going to be like, you know, I liken it to a workout because it is work, but it's a workout. And so if you've ever been, you know, in the gym for a minute, you don't go right in and it may not come natural to you. You know, learning the form may take a session or two or three or seven or eight to get the form right. But once you get the form right, it seems awkward at first. But if you keep coming and keep working it, it becomes more natural. I want to say that because as we're going through this alliteration, the cram process may seem a little awkward. Wait a minute. First is the C, communication.
Mm-hmm.
It is relevance. And so you're just learning to get the form. So it might not flow as smoothly as you'd like it at
That's
first,
right.
but keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And it'll become more natural. And your response time may even get quicker. You know, because now you've been a practitioner of it. Don't give up on it because it seems awkward at first. Don't dismiss it. Stay in this gym and get healthy. So that's just what's coming to mind for me. I know we're in our last couple of minutes, Dr. Shepard.
No, this is good. And one of the things I have learned, learned, you cannot rush the process. And that's why even today I wanted this to soak in. We don't need a brief shower. We need a soaking rain. We need one of those type of soaks where it gets into the crevices of our minds, the crevices of our hearts, allow the word that is penetrating, as Bishop just said, that is separating literally the bone from the marrow. I mean, that I love. I love the illustration of that as the word talks about that. But the only way you can do it is that you have to have something that can reach in between those hidden areas. And we have to demonstrate that even on our platforms. Stop rushing. Allow time to let's chew through this thing. And I say chew through it. I'm not saying make a hole. I mean, let's sit down and let's talk about it. Let's converse. Let's break it apart. Because as we do that, that's where I believe the revelation will occur, the insight, the healing will occur. I'm just going to stop there, Bishop. That's why I felt literally the Spirit of the Lord said, that's enough. Let's just chew on it. And we want to make sure that you all have got it down real good. And let me tell you, I'm walking through this process with you. I hear you, Brother Thomas Scott Jr. You've been a blessing in your comments today.
Indeed.
I'm tired of arrested development. You got to get to that point. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of arrested development. And that's where the illumination of the mind comes, because some people don't realize that they're crippled. Some people don't even realize that they're deformed, and they don't realize they're deformed until they start seeing healthiness, or seeing healthy demonstration of what it things should look like. And this is our job today, to present those things to you on a healthy platform, from a healthy space, from a healthy mindset, so that we as people can grow after the post-traumatic event. Bishop, I'm done.
Wow, I'm with you, brother Scott. Thank you so much. And that's a good thing, actually, when we get like, I want to grow. And so many others put that in the chat line. I want to grow. What that means is that you're listening to that inner voice. I started out talking about, and you can read it in your devotional time, Ecclesiastes 3:10. He says, God has made everything beautiful in its time. So there's that process again. So give it time. There's a set time. God's going to make your situation come into its fullest bloom. But you got to want to grow. But then he says also, he has put eternity in their hearts. And so the moment we start, that's that voice that says, I want to grow. Keep growing. Keep going. Listen to that voice, because that's the voice that says, I want you to grow. I want you to grow. I want you to become more. I want you to maximize your potential. That's the voice that the Bible says God has put inside of us, because God is interested in our healthy and holistic growth. And so he says, that's in your heart, which is another word for your spirit, man, your inner mind, will, and emotional self. He said, there's something, your spirit has consciousness of a reality your body and even your natural mind has not yet encountered. But that's what keeps motivating us, something inside of us. And it's hard to put your finger on it. When I was growing up, they used to sing a song in the Sanctified Church. I used to hear them say all the time, something about the Holy Ghost I cannot explain,
Yes.
but I got it.
Right.
So,
Yep.
so it's that voice that you can't totally articulate it, but you can hear it in those still quiet moments saying, there's more. Keep growing. Don't get stuck here. I know it hurt. The trauma was real, but as we talked about last week from 1 Samuel 3, you shall recover. so I know that's all we have time for Spirit of Mind. And I do want to say this. I know that cram process that we're discussing, again, it's transferable. It's a scientific, which means it's been researched and applied and tested, and the results have been analyzed for consistency of outcome. And so it's scientific, but it's also transferable to different situations, whatever decisions you have to make. I see someone has to make a decision about bone marrow, and that's powerful, because we just finished talking about Hebrews 4 and bone and marrow. And so that cram decision process of going through these things can be very helpful in whatever decision you have to make, whether it's to change jobs or to stay on a job or whatever decision, family decisions. Go through that cram process. We just got to do 2 of them today. But hopefully you'll be able to make that transition and application to different forks in the road of your life, different critical points.
Yes, sir. So thank you all for watching. Alberta Chapman, please make sure you see your doctor in relation to how to treat the beta thalassemia. I do remember studying that, but that is not in my place to talk about that on this particular platform. So just make sure you check with your physician, and we pray that if there's any type of adverse effects, that the Lord will bring you through that and heal you, so that it is not something that will stunt your growth. Amen. All right, Bishop, we want to take it out of here. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the comments. We appreciate all the comments, and stay tuned. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. There's some exciting things coming up very soon that you should be really enjoying on a more consistent basis. in addition to our live broadcast. So I can't wait to be able to reveal that news to you. So God bless you as you go into the next week.
Amen. Follow up with your physician, your doctor, your pastor, and say, hey, I want to go through this cram process with you, because there's help and hope available. By the grace of God, we look forward to seeing you next time on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.